when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking for, or are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Monday, everybody. I know it's one of those slow mornings for a lot of us out there who are just getting back off of a nice 4 or 5 day break potentially for you. But I have got a very special guest for you guys here today. And it's the literal most important topic that's out there in business. And that's cash flow. How are you going to get your money faster? Where are things looking? I mean, all signs are pointing to the market possibly not recovering for the foreseeable future. And again, we got to make our money work. We got to implement these best practices today, because you just never know, right? There's a lot of uncertainties out there. And I got my good friend, Grace Maher, back on the show with OTR Solutions. So Grace, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Always. It's so good to see you, Chris. I love every time we get to connect. So this is great.
It's been a while now, and you're out, you're on the road. You did not waste a second to get back out and get back to work here, because I mean, we gotta finish the year strong. I just put a post up this morning about this, Grace. I think, I mean, at this point in my life, it's safe to say a lot of people wait till Monday or wait till 2026, or they're always pushing off, like, making those inevitable changes that they actually need to do in their business. And from my perspective, having a strong fiscal discipline and fiscal understanding of your business operations, I think, is missed by so many people out there. And, I say that with confidence because I had to learn the hard way, right? Like, I had to go out there and kind of figure out a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Look, I think the evolution of factoring has changed so much, just even since I came into the industry, over 14 years ago. And this idea that, like, factoring is just, it's for companies who are having issues with cash flow. If you're not in this industry, it's hard to really understand when we talk about cash flow and how important it is. But because this industry is so fragmented, and if you're a carrier, you're getting payments from all over the place, right? And it used to be this idea that, like, factoring is needed for carriers and brokers who are just struggling. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. The right company is so much more than that, and getting cash flow to a business in this industry in a tough freight market, which many people are like, what does that mean? This industry is just so cyclical. The highs are high and the lows are low. And right now it's been low for a really long time. So yeah, cash flow is incredibly important, making sure that you get the truck notes paid, insurance, drivers, you've got maintenance costs. I mean, there's a lot that goes into running freight.
What do you think people get? I mean, you brought up a good point about, like, with factoring. So my question is what do you think people get wrong about that? Because you're right. it's not for businesses that are struggling, that are on factoring. And I think like there's a negative connotation out there when you see that a business utilizes factoring.
Well, that's interesting you say that, right? That there might be a negative connotation, because the way I like to see it now, and of course I'm biased, is that like if you see a carrier factoring with OTR, you should almost be more likely to load them. And the reason why I say that is because there's a whole other, segment of vetting that goes on that we do just to work with the carrier. And we're watching them on every load, right? Not just the load that maybe a broker has them booked on. So yes, I feel like many years ago, it was like, if you were factoring, did that make your trucking company look like you were struggling? Whereas fast forward today, if you're working with a top factoring company, I would like to think that in market, you look like, oh, okay, you have a back office and you're smart because you're outsourcing that back office so you can do what you do best, which is focus on freight relationships, moving efficiently, finding, the best freight for your business, not necessarily like who you need to bill and have you gotten paid, because that's what we do. We do that. We're the experts in that.
I look at it where, my question is going to be more along the lines of like, when you guys see like where fraud is right now in the industry, are you guys almost like welcome to the party? Because like you guys have, on the financial side of things, you guys have probably been treating fraud as a number one thing for a very long time, right? Because you guys are literally putting it all on the line to front people capital. So it's like the vetting process that has to go into just having a carrier or a broker become factorable has to be extremely extensive.
It is. And you're completely right. And I think that that's what also will differentiate, factors from not all being created equal. And which is why I think as we continue to evolve, we only look stronger in the sense that like, what are all the measures that we're doing to not only prevent fraud, but to detect fraud as it occurs? In other words, like I always like to think that when we send the paperwork to a broker, they shouldn't need to re-audit it. They shouldn't need to double check for fraud. Like if OTR has purchased it, it's because we feel confident that not only is that bill correct, like if we wouldn't buy it with our own money, we certainly wouldn't bill it to you, right? So getting that message across, I think is pretty awesome, because I think brokers actually are starting to go, wow, like we don't need the manpower to necessarily audit all of these invoices that are coming over, depending on who they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And, if it's coming directly from the carrier, you want to deal with, 5,000 different carriers, or do you want to deal with one factor that you know and love?
No, I completely understand. And so like to give the brokers a little bit of peace of mind with a lot of this, right? Like when you guys are out there and say, you guys are working with all of your clients out there, every single trucking company that factors with OTR, what are those things that you guys put into place to ensure that like when you are actually invoicing, sending over the paperwork, what internal things are you guys doing to verify and vet that, hey, this is all a legitimate, piece of paperwork?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, the evolution of where we started and where we are today is totally different. I'm sure you remember the days of Trip Pack and originals. And I can remember when I first started training people and like I would open up a Trip Pack with originals, PODs, and I would hand them, I'm like, this is like gold. This is real money right here. Like this POD represents, in 2015, we created the OTR app, which was the first time a factoring company created an app that allowed carriers to pay off of a copy. Then we went paperless, where everything was scanned and emailed over. And now we are, in other words, we used to actually print out every invoice that was sent to us and like audit it on the paper. Now everything runs through automation. Since 2022, we actually scan every single document. And I can't give you all of our secrets, but I can tell you that the vetting process on a document looks for all types of fraud. And we have such a catalog and history of data on fraud that for us, even from a lease agreement standpoint, We're tracking everything. And, I feel confident we're doing it the right way because we can look at other write-offs across other companies. And, I think the bad actors understand, not to say we don't see new things. Fraud is so sophisticated. It's unbelievable. These people are so brilliant, right? Scary, brilliant, but we continue to find ways and monitor and think about how do we prevent fraud and how do we keep the brokers safe, in thinking about loading an OTR carrier.
How are you guys working, kind of to stay on fraud here a little bit? How are you guys working to ensure your clients are protected from, say, double brokers and everything else? Because I look at it like the real victims of identity theft, fraud are the actual carriers who are hauling the freight that now are not going to get paid for the work that they did. And that could potentially be that death blow to their organization. That $5-6 grand that they were supposed to get paid is now no longer going to happen. Or maybe they got looped in and they've hauled like 5 or 6 loads for this person and they're not going to get that big payday that they thought.
Right. Yeah. Look, we tell all of our carriers to do a broker check. We confirm contact information for them so that hopefully they're talking to the right person. A lot of this is just education. A lot of this is helping them find good freight, making sure that they're taking freight from, responsibly. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. We tell them that. We're also hopefully if someone is newer to the industry and not sure how they should be thinking about double brokering and being a victim of that, hopefully we're catching that, up front so that they're not taking 3, 4, 5, 6 loads. Double brokering is an issue, but for the most part, we see it even evolve at the agent level within some of the brokers, whereas old double brokering isn't as common, I think. It still happens, but not necessarily for an OTR factor client. Because again, like I said, they're going to check and make sure that the broker's factorable, and we're going to give them information that says you need to make sure you're talking to this number and this, email distro, that type of thing to help them prevent that.
Yeah, I look at a lot of the stuff on where we are right now, Grace, as an industry. And I view it as it's like the more digital things get, I feel like those basic vetting skills that are still tried and true to this day, right? That is going to protect your organization so much more than I think most people even realize, right? And it's I would like to know how much of this stuff is done based on email only load booking. Right? If there's a carrier out there and they're, emailing a broker about a load and stuff, I wonder what percentage of those loads are the fraudulent ones that lead to it, as opposed to when you pick up the phone and actually talk to somebody. Because it's I feel a lot of people out there, they know, when you're talking to an individual and you're getting lied to, I think a lot of us kind of reach that point in life where this person's full of shit. Right. And I think that's why it's so important to stay on the phone with people, right? And as a broker myself, and I try and tell drivers when I have them on the show or when we're talking to them, when we're booking them for loads on our brokerage, I'm asking a lot of questions because I want to know if you're legitimate or not. Because I can tell based on a couple of key questions that I ask if they know what they're doing or if I feel comfortable with them being on the load. And I stopped speaking about it publicly because I don't want to give the fraudsters any leg up on what people are looking for. Because to me, there's a couple of very basic things that if you can't answer, I don't care what you're telling me. I'm not gonna book you on my customer's freight at all.
Right. I think a lot of it is email. I'm surprised that anyone takes freight from a Gmail anymore. That's a pretty common, or, the caller ID doesn't come up as the brokerage. There's just a lot of little small nuances, but you're right. You don't know what you don't know when you're first coming into the industry. And when freight is so hard to find, and you're just trying to, keep the bills paid. You're thinking, oh my gosh, maybe this is a good load. But again, we try to provide the education for carriers to understand. But just to kick it back to you, when you are working with a carrier, if you see them that they're factored, does that weigh in your decision making of who you load at all?
No, not at all. That doesn't even trip my radar. Like honestly, I look at it as that is something that a lot of businesses utilize because like it's a tool, right? Like access to capital is a tool. And you know, I would say in today's environment, like I look at it as if you're factored, that is actually a more of a positive than a negative out there, because at the end of the day, I know that you're going to be a little bit more organized than the people who are not, right? Like I look at it as there's going to be, there's more skin in the game for that person than there's somebody who isn't, right? And again, if somebody's built up their business to the point where they don't utilize factoring anymore because they have enough cash in the bank, they've built that war chest up, cool. I get that. I understand. Right. But I also look at it as from my perspective, it's a tool that is out there that a lot of business owners, I don't even know if are aware that is at their disposal. And it's going to be cheaper than a line of credit from a bank in most instances or not, because like we have a line of credit for our business right now. We don't use it, but I know what the interest rate is on there, and I know it's more expensive than a line of from a factoring company by a couple of points, to say the least. But to your original question there, Grace, no, it doesn't even trip my radar at all on if I'm going to work with a carrier or not because they're factored. That's irrelevant to me.
Well, I'd like to argue that you know you should consider that. And here's the thing: I know you help a ton of new brokers that are getting into this space, and you know you've always been very open about here's how you can run a great business, right? And I've loved that about you. You know, it's like there's enough business out there for everyone, and let's talk about how we do it right. And at this stage of the game in 2020, almost 6, I'd say, you know, working with a carrier who factors depending on the factor. And of course, I'm biased with OTR, but I say that because I do think it makes a difference. Like if you're a new broker and you're looking at carriers that you could load, here's why you like the one that factors. You like the one that factors because the factor vetted them as well. So you might trust your own vetting, but now you're going, you know what? They're vetted sort of twice. So I feel good that like OTR vetted them, and I feel good that I vetted them. You also like the factoring company, you know, because they're going to make sure when they bill you right. So now all of a sudden, if you care about your back office, your own brokerage back office, and like dealing with carriers and chasing down paperwork and being able to bill your own customer, you want to work with the paperwork that's probably coming with the factor, because when they purchased it, they wanted to make sure it was there too, depending on the factor, right? So there's so many reasons why I'm thinking, you know, brokers should look at a factored carrier and think this is a more, you know, I have more confidence in this carrier and booking this carrier because of all these other, you know, reasons that I just don't think are talked about enough in the way that we're thinking about how carriers move. Independent trucking companies, 70 to 80% are probably factoring if they're under 5 trucks.
Yeah.
They, you know, they do this efficiently. We're helping them find freight. They're more likely to stay in business if they factor, you know, so if they're on your load and something happens, they're going to get support, maybe fuel advances too. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I could argue a lot of reasons why it, you know, I want brokers to think about it more as a value add. Because I remember years ago, someone from a very large freight brokerage, one of the largest in you know the world, looked at me and said, "I don't want to deal with factors at all." And a few years ago, I saw him at a conference, and he looked at me and he said, "You know what? We figure if we can't beat you, we'll join you." Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's like this whole. I think everyone realized like the factor is here to stay because it's so much more than just buying an invoice.
What I was going to say, have some of your clients came to you and said that brokers are refusing to work with them because they are factored? I guess I've never. Oh, okay.
No. That they recognize that like working with a carrier who is factored it can be more beneficial than working with one who isn't.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess when I was answering you earlier, I was coming from the stance of like when I see a carrier's factored, I don't look at that as like a negative that I don't want to work with a carrier based on that. I thought that was the context of your question there, because I know that it was like back in the day that was, you know, it was a negative connotation out there. Like, oh, if they're factored, they can't afford to stay in business.
Yeah, true. But even so now, it's like I've talked to other brokers rise. I think, no one really has the data on this to prove it to me. But if you talk to your back office and you could look at how many times you're having to call a carrier and ask for paperwork, or you're having to call a factor and say, hey, we need paperwork. I bet you it's rarely OTR, because all of our documents are running through automation and telling us what we're missing, what we need to add, if there's any discrepancies, if there's any damages, shortages, if a temperature was off. So I'd like to think it's a value add, when you're working with the carriers with OTR.
No, it is, because especially if you're out there, the amount of times that I know we have to chase down paperwork, right? That's a time expense that we're looking at, and we're knock on wood, we're very fortunate. Like, we work with the same group of carriers for the majority of our freight. So like, they've bought into that process, but it's not always like that. Like, when there's people, and this is the thing I've never understood is like, why are you not invoicing faster? Like, if that's the document, that POD, that invoice, if that's the thing that gets you paid, why are you waiting to invoice anybody for the work that you do? And I feel like that's where the value, if I was a carrier or even a broker, that's where the value of working with a factoring company is, right? Is the ability to turn those invoices down, because most people think that when they see net 30, it's from the 30 days from the day you delivered the load. Well, that's not the case with most brokers. It's net 30 from the day they receive the invoice. So if you don't invoice for 10 days after you delivered a load for whatever reason, that's when the payment terms actually start. So it's like, I think like there's a lot of those misconceptions out there from how do you even properly bill somebody, that you see that. And I think, again, that just comes with learning and going through a lot of the motions kind of early on in business. Is I'm like, no, I want to get out as easy as possible to from a billing perspective. I would argue now, Grace, we're kind of coming up to a point where your ability to properly invoice your customers, whether it be a shipper or not, is almost more of a factor in if they're going to continue to work with you. I would say it's at that level of you picking up and delivering on time, is your ability to invoice them properly. And if you can't do that, they'll kick you out just as fast as failed loads.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the points we try to make too, is that once you get that invoice from OTR, go ahead and bill your customer. And that's why we, ePay is such a great benefit to the broker as well, because once you get that POD, it automatically bills the customer when it pays the carrier too. So it's also important. Time is money, and getting these things paid correctly. But like, you don't want to lose a customer over billing. Mm-hmm. Come on.
Yeah.
There's great tools out there. And talking about the POD, I mean, that's why I know we were intending to chat about, truly instant funding and, the launch of our ability to now pay carriers 24/7. But the idea being that, you deliver that bill and you upload it, through the OTR mobile app portal, and you can get paid instantly. And that's available now because of the fact that we've built this automation and the technology around being able to verify documents and verify rates and understand the carrier's patterns and history and, work history with brokers to approve those invoices so that someone can get paid, whether it's 2 a.m. on a Monday night or 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Because historically, carriers are only getting paid via the broker or the factor, whether that's quick pay or it's a factored load, during regular banking hours, because everybody was held to the, Federal Reserve regulation, like when ACH and wires can go out.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore. So, we're really excited. Our carriers, even on Friday after Thanksgiving, when most businesses are completely shut down, we had hundreds of payments going out,
Wow.
And thousands over the weekend. And we'll continue to see that as carriers understand that their behavior changed now. Just upload the document when you deliver, and OTR will let you know the second it's approved, so you can get paid in seconds. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. The feedback that we've gotten is amazing, because trucking's 24/7. So why shouldn't payments be that too?
No, I love that. And again, it's like, any phase of your business, that's a value add. But like for the majority of the industry that, and I mean, this is just the majority of businesses out there, not even in trucking, that are small businesses that are 30 days away from going out of business, right? Like if there's any delay in payments at all, I don't know if enough people can fully comprehend how many businesses are teetering on insolvency every single month. And I look at something like this, and again, you're going to pay for money no matter what, right? Like I've gone out there, like whether it's a credit card, and I'm just speaking from my seat right now, whether it's a line of credit from the bank, that's going to cost you something. Whether it's a credit card, that's going to cost you something. A loan, that's going to cost you something, right? But like getting that access to your money, right? Like I utilize QuickBooks inside of my business, and there's credit card processing fees and stuff that come up. There's fees for that. But again, the fact that I can get instant access to my capital is huge. If an unintended expense pops up, whatever happens, you're talking about fuel advances. Last time I checked, trucks can break down, right? And it's like the fact that you can deliver a load, and then I don't want this to happen for any of my drivers that are watching right now and listening. You could deliver a load, and then 6 hours later, something could go wrong and you have to get towed, or you have to get a $2,000 repair. You can pull that and have that finances in there to where, you know what? You don't have to put that on a credit card. That might cost you 20% interest and stuff like that. So again, there's tools at your disposal now where it's the speed that I love the most too, right? Like you can get that. Like what's the average turnaround time on that? If anybody was using what your that product now, Grace, is it
listen, it's first of all, it's seconds from within once the carrier says, yes, I want to get paid. So in other words, they submit an invoice. We have to approve it and verify it. Once we do that, which can take seconds if it runs through automation and everything checks out. But if it does need to be verified, let's say there's an exception on the POD, something about damages or an exception, we are going to need to look into that. But the second that the invoice is approved, it actually shows up in the OTR mobile app and it says, your available funds. And you just click that. Once you click that, within seconds, it's in your account. It's either paid to the debit card you have on file, or it's paid to the checking account you have on file within seconds. And, we love this. We've always said, if you look back at other, shows I've been on or whatnot, and I would always say that, if a carrier sends a bill to us, they expect to get paid. And they shouldn't be surprised if for whatever reason we can't. Because truthfully, we don't know if that's paying for a prescription that they need to pick up later that day, a birthday cake for their family, before a Thanksgiving holiday, that's the turkey. We don't know. But what we do know is they think they're getting that money. And what they need to use it for, they need to use it for. And so I've always been very passionate. We as a business have always been passionate about making sure that the carriers get paid. And then that changed and evolved into how do we make sure that they get paid even more quickly than ever? Because it is about the blown tire, and it is about the truck note, and it is about the insurance that costs double what it did, years ago. But it's also just about the everyday expenses. I mean, these are men and women that are supporting their families off of, load to load, and making sure that they can get those funds whenever they want has always been our end goal, not just, by 3 p.m. you have to submit your invoice and therefore you'll get an ACH the next day. Other companies say maybe within 4 hours you can get priority paid. OTR is looking at this as like, how do we just make sure you drop paperwork, we approve it, and you get paid, and we can do that within 20 minutes, seconds. And that's where we're going. That's where, that's fintech. That's financial services and technology combined, and that's who we want to be in market, is the leader in getting people paid quickly, and the technology that handles that we created and we own.
See, I love that. That's where I see technology. Like, that's what I'm a massive fan of it, right? Is it's like when those things happen that like truly benefit your customers, benefit the end user, like that just sets the bar, right? Like that's where the real innovation happens out there, is when there's a product like this that's available. Like to me, it's like, this is the stuff that gets me excited about like literally everything about where this industry is, but where it's going to go, right? Like, cause this is just that next step, right? Like you talked about how when you first started, it was the trip packet back in the day, and now we come to instant funding in 14 short years, right? So it's like that constant evolution of where technology is and where it's trending, I think is like ultimately going to benefit the end user more than not.
100%. I mean, we're about to get into, so much more than that, freight matching and allowing carriers to understand, how they're getting paid compared to market, and adding in even broker vetting. I mean, there's, a ton out there on carrier vetting and how the carriers are running. But what about the brokers?
I agree.
Who's paying attention? Who's not? Who's taking forever to load? Who's, putting carriers on do not load? What, rightfully and not, just tons of, there's so much that we can continue to do. And our sole purpose is just thinking about how do we keep independent trucking companies running more successfully day after day.
No, I agree with that on brokers. I think that that's one thing that needs to come like mainstream next is true broker vetting software, true broker vetting to make sure like who's legit and who's not. And, and I say this as just somebody who isn't a scammer or a criminal. Like, I don't care. Like, I want those ratings out there. I want people to know that I'm a legitimate company, because I think that only benefits the industry. I think that would only benefit the only people who are going to be opposed to anything like that are the criminals. Because like, why would they want to be exposed, right? Like it's open season for them right now. But I think higher standards is what needs to happen. I really do. And I think that I hope that is that next iteration of freight tech that comes out is the ones that benefit the right providers that's out there. Because that's literally just aligns with everything I've been trying to do for the last 5 years on this show. I want to put the right information out there to help elevate the right companies. The fraudsters, the criminals, like I hope they all go away. But it's like, how do we elevate the right people who are doing it the right way? That's the only way anything ever is going to change or improve.
Yeah, from a fraud perspective, absolutely. But even just from the good brokers that are out there taking care of carriers versus the ones who maybe take advantage of, the hard times or the low times or cutting contracts, like where's the commentary on that as well? Because the brokers that take care of the carriers and the carriers love, like, shouldn't that be somewhere? And so, we are already doing broker checks and broker approvals. And so we're trying to make sure that this is front and center for our carriers. Like, this is how our carriers feel. This is the sentiment around these brokers. They check the carrier, it's approved. And by the way, this is a, preferred broker by the OTR carrier.
I love that. I think that's a great tool, and that should be out there at a higher level across the board. But Grace, I appreciate your time. I know you got a day job to get back to here, but how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you guys got going on at OTR?
Oh my goodness, www.otrsolutions.com. And again, I'm Grace Maher, and you can find me on LinkedIn. It's always great to see you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
No, anytime, Grace. And that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys can't find Grace or OTR out there, hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything.